Well, hey there everyone, Kay here on my homestead in Tennessee. I've got the two cats with me on the porch. It's supposed to be pouring rain. It was supposed to be storming all morning and raining all day. No rain. As I was doing my morning, checking out links and so forth, I saw a video that I really wish I hadn't seen, but I have to bring it to your attention. So grab a cup of tea and let's talk about it. Okay, this conversation goes back to the beginning days of Whole Foods. Now, when I was in California, there was a store named Mrs. Gooch's, and she carried, well, I guess it was a she, I think it was a woman. She had 2 or 3 stores, and she carried all the organic foods as they were coming through. Really had the healthiest food you could buy on the west side of Los Angeles. That was bought out by a company called Whole Foods. Whole Foods is not what it used to be. When it started, the whole concept of Whole Foods is you take a food that is the very, very least processed it could possibly be. It retains more nutritional value, and so when you consume it, it makes you healthier. That's just the general idea of Whole Foods, right? So, for example, milk. They have done more to manipulate milk than you can imagine, and had by at least 23 years ago. I had a book about milk and all the steps it went through from, it's separated at the dairy when it comes out of the cows, and the fat is sent to Utah, and the skim is sent to New York. The cream is made in Iowa, whatever, so it's just so changed from what it was originally, straight out of the animal. Of course, I was totally into all of this from the beginning. I followed the organic food movement from the beginning of dried beans. Dried black beans was the very first thing I could buy that was organic. And then it went to rice, and eventually went to some vegetables. And then it eventually went to dairy. But, they make organic dairies jump through so many hoops. It's so cost prohibitive to actually get an organic certification. Anybody that grows their own food believes in the power and nutritional benefit, nutritionally dense foods which are whole and the very least amount of processing possible. I have always followed that idea. And since my great awakening about food and organic and chemicals and all of that started in 1992 when my son was diagnosed with asthma. No asthma history in the family, and I feel sure of how this came about. But nevertheless, there were years of so many medications to just get my son through the night. And so there came a day of reckoning when he was about 9 or 10, where he had a major detox from all of these pharmaceuticals. At any rate, I've always focused on whole food. Now, this particular dairy, JD Country Milk, Russellville, Kentucky, all natural milk, grade A, low temperature pasteurized, not homogenized. They never mentioned that, people that raised their own cows and milked their own cows and drank that milk straight from the cow never got sick. There was the occasional story, and so, of course, they jumped on that and started doing all of this processing of milk. I am going to be having a chuck roast. Now, this chuck roast was, it was a grass-fed animal. I personally know the woman who grew this animal. I picked it up from the slaughterhouse, and so it went straight from the animal to the slaughterhouse and straight into my freezer. The animal had no drugs, grass-fed all the way, so no GMO corn or anything like that to fatten them up at the end. And so that is as whole a food as you can get, unless you go out and shoot your own deer and cut it up yourself. Keeping that in mind, just think about all of the different foods that go through so much of a production process just to get into a bag or get into a box and wind up in your kitchen. I don't buy any junk food. I had the philosophy from, back when I struggled with my child's asthma, that there would be no junk food, no soda, nothing like that in my house. And if we had cookies, then I would make them out of 5 ingredients instead of, you can buy cookies at the store and there will be a paragraph of ingredients, some of which you cannot pronounce, on the label. Read your labels. Do read your labels. And you say, well, I can't afford the better food. That may be true, but eat less eat less junk food, and maybe you'll be able to afford more whole foods. But if there's anything that's not a whole food, and I'm going to try to find this, it's what they're trying to do now with milk. Did you know that the dairy alternative, and it's called Ento milk, E-N-T-O milk, is already being produced in many nations and is made from, get ready, the maggot larva of black soldier flies? Trust me, you do not want to see this video. It's stomach turning to see how they make this in the production facility. You want to call it a laboratory. I mean, it's blended and well, first they grow them out and then blend them, and I don't even know what all they do to it to wind up on the shelf looking like a milk alternative. But just be very aware of when you buy something. If you don't buy it, you won't eat it. This is what I always tell myself. Whenever I want a treat or I go, gosh, it'd be fun to have some chips or something. If you don't have it in your kitchen, you're not going to get in your car and go drive to a store to get it. Especially when you used to buy a bag of chips for maybe $3 and there would be that many chips, and now it's $3 and there's that many chips. Inflation is real, and it may not be, it probably is noticeable, but if you haven't noticed it, it may be because the portion in the container is less than what you've always known it to be. But just think about eating whole foods, because your health is all you've got, right? If you have to go to the drugstore and come home with 2 big bags like my sister did of pharmaceuticals, and you're balancing one against the other, one causes this reaction, one causes that reaction, and then you've got to take something else for that problem, and it's just barely keeping the balls up in the air. And I'm not criticizing anybody or putting anybody down, because people historically have listened to their doctors. I hate to say it, but many doctors have no idea what are in these medications. They don't. Ask them, well, what's in that? What are the side effects? And I bet you won't get a good answer. Or they might just dismiss you as kind of being crazy. I used to say to my doctor, I don't want a prescription, I just want to know what you think, using your best knowledge, what you think is wrong with me. He would say, Kaye, you're tying my hands behind my back. Like, if I can't write you a prescription, I can't help you. Come on. There are other ways to get healthy, I just did a video recently. The huge number of people who are pre-diabetic in this country, it's like 60% of adults and 33% of children are pre-diabetic. This was unheard of when I grew up. Even when my son grew up, it was unheard of for so many young people to have this condition. And rather than recommending healthy whole foods and exercise, they're saying, oh, well, come take this medicine and this will help you manage this condition. Well, do you want to manage your condition, or do you want to get well? Do you want to get strong and get well? Because We need to have all the strength and all the mental faculties we can right now to face what we're facing in this world. We have a lot to contend with right now in our country, and we need to be as mentally sharp and as physically prepared as we can to meet the challenges ahead, both our children and adults. So consider, when you go shopping, attempt to buy whole foods, packages of food with very few ingredients like tomatoes and salt. If you buy canned tomatoes, tomatoes and salt, that's what it would be in it if you canned it yourself. It would be tomatoes and salt, possibly citric acid. So just keep it simple as you possibly can. And you're going to be healthier, and you're going to be more mentally aware. If you're really ready to start getting healthy for the challenges ahead, consider eating whole foods, leaving off the junk food, leaving off the soda. I know this is tough for people who drink it all the time. My father had a soda machine. It was a glass-bottled Coca-Cola machine, and it had Coke and Pepsi and grape knee-high and orange, orange crush, or whatever the orange flavor was. I never drank the orange. It looked so fake. But I drank the grape, and I drank the Coca-Cola, and then I did eat cookies. I ate cookies, so I ate a lot of sweets growing up. My mother was not careful about that, and you know, by the time I was a teenager, every one of my molars had fillings, silver fillings, amalgam. Be very careful about what you put in your body. Do you want to pull up to the gas station and put dirty gas in your car? You think it's going to run on if you put a can of used motor oil in your engine? No, it's not going to. So think about your body that way also. Whole foods, limited ingredients, no junk food. Try to leave off all of those kinds of foods. And I hope this is helpful. And I'd like to know if you try it. And if you have tried this stuff, I'm not calling it food, because anything that processed is not food. It's just a food substitute. It's a milk alternative, but it's really a food substitute. It may have some kind of protein in it that they've manufactured. It's not milk. And you'd be better off just to not use milk than to take a product like this. So think about that as we go forward, because the whole idea is to get us eating bugs, to make us think that animals, you know, that are actually good, they regenerate the land, the hoofed animals, and they want us to believe that all of that is bad, that eating bugs is good. Now, I was one of the first people to talk about this a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, and now you can't help but see it almost every day, an article about eating bugs almost every day. I hope this is helpful. Please let me know if it is. Leave me a comment below. Be sure and subscribe to my channel. Hi, look who's here. It's BJ. Yeah, it's BJ. It's very important to know where your food comes from. If you're not growing it yourself, and most people aren't because most people live in cities, it's very important to know where your food comes from. If you're ready to start using whole foods, but you've been using pasteurized, homogenized milk for your whole life, if you go raw, you need to go gradually. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist, but I know for a fact that you need to make an adjustment slowly. It's just like if you've never had fermented food and you go, oh, this kind of tastes good, and then you eat a whole jar of fermented peppers and you're going to be in the bathroom all night. You know what I'm saying? Getting a low processed milk, if it's at all available to you, that's the way to go. because this is a step down. Ultra pasteurized is the absolute worst because they put milk through extremely high temperatures to kill all the germs, they say. And guess what else it kills? All the healthy enzymes, and you don't want that. So yeah, so that's my message for today. Read labels, whole foods, cut out the junk food, exercise, and get ready. I was very aware that there was raw milk for sale in Santa Monica. There wasn't a lot of it because there was only one dairy at the time, and that was Claravale Dairy, and they only had 60 cows in rotation producing milk up in Northern California. I wanted my young sons to see where their milk came from. So we made a trip up there to Northern California to go to the dairy, and we could see the cows, and they were happy and they were lazing around. Of course, this was in a beautiful setting. It was on the ocean, and they had the most beautiful setting you can imagine. But we got to go into the milking area, and they literally milked the cow and put the milk through a filter, a screen, and it went straight into the bottle. I mean, you can't get any more whole than that. And of course, both of my grandparents, my grandfather had his own small dairy himself, so, and a number of people in their small town benefited from his whole milk. Whole, unprocessed milk. It was just really cool for them to be able to see, here's a cow, here's the process, and seeing it being milked, and then literally drinking the milk right after it was milked. And it was incredible. And of course, when I went to my grandmother's, I would open the refrigerator and there would be a pitcher of milk with that much fat on the top. You know, I go, oh, that's weird, you know, because we're drinking this homogenized stuff in cartons back at the house. So it was a little weird, but you know, what I didn't realize was this is the real deal. And this is processed. So we've all been kind of trained to eat processed food, and we have to re-educate ourselves about what's really good for us. If you're interested in the purest form of milk, of course, get your own cow. And if you don't have room for a cow, find a producer of the cleanest, purest, least processed milk you can find.